In this video, we break down a joint 2026 advisory on how China Nexus cyber actors are hiding behind massive covert networks of hacked devices, and what defenders can do about it. In April 2026, the UK's National Cybersecurity Centre, along with partners from Australia, Canada, Germany, Japan, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Spain, Sweden, and the United States, released an advisory on a major shift in Chinese state-linked cyber operations. Instead of relying on infrastructure they buy or rent themselves, these actors are increasingly routing attacks through large-scale networks of compromised routers, IoT gear, and other edge devices, what the advisory calls covert networks. A covert network is essentially a botnet optimized for stealth, deniability, and scale. A China Nexus cyber actor first connects into the network through an entry node, then bounces traffic across multiple hacked devices acting as traversal nodes, and finally exits the network from a node that appears to sit near the victim geographically. The result is low-cost, low-risk connectivity, where scans, malware delivery, command and control, and data exfiltration all look like they are coming from ordinary consumer devices instead of a hostile government. These same covert networks can also be used just to browse the internet without attribution, letting operators research exploits, refine TTPs, and study potential targets while blending in with legitimate traffic. Investigators have already tied several large covert networks to China Nexus activity. One network, dubbed Raptor Train, infected more than 200,000 devices globally in 2024 and was controlled by the Chinese company Integrity Technology Group, which the FBI linked to the intrusion set known as Flax Typhoon. Another, the KV Botnet, was used by Typhoon to pre-position offensive cyber capabilities on critical national infrastructure, primarily by exploiting end-of-life Cisco and Netgear routers that were no longer receiving security updates. Security vendors have warned that these covert networks are breaking traditional defenses. If multiple threat groups can all come from many different covert networks, each with hundreds of thousands of endpoints, static malicious IP block lists quickly become obsolete, a problem the advisory highlights as indicator of compromise extinction. Because nodes are constantly added and removed as devices are patched, retired, or newly exploited, defenders are aiming at a moving target. So what can organizations actually do? The advisory starts with several baseline actions that every organization should either implement themselves or demand from their security providers. First, map and understand your network edge, routers, VPN concentrators, firewalls, and any exposed services, so you know exactly what should be talking to them. Second, baseline normal connections, especially to corporate VPNs or similar services, and ask the hard question, should you actually be seeing logins from consumer broadband ranges or unusual geographies? Third, consume and act on dynamic threat feeds that track covert network infrastructure instead of relying solely on static lists. And fourth, enforce multi-factor authentication for all remote access paths to make stolen credentials far less useful. For larger or more at-risk organizations, the guidance escalates. Instead of deny lists, implement IP allow lists for remote worker VPN access, and where practical, restrict or profile incoming connections based on expected geography, time zones, operating systems, and organization-specific indicators. Shift toward a zero-trust model for connections, enforce machine certificates for SSL VPNs, and reduce your overall internet-facing footprint. The advisory also encourages exploring machine learning techniques to profile what normal edge network activity looks like so you can automatically surface anomalies that may indicate covert network traffic. At the very top end, critical infrastructure and organizations tracking advanced, persistent threats. The document suggests treating China Nexus covert networks as APTs in their own right. That means actively hunting for connections from IP space associated with SOHO routers and IoT devices, tracking and mapping covert networks using banners and certificates, and building dynamic block lists and alert rules from threat reporting and commercial feeds. It also recommends using NetFlow data to look upstream, mapping how covert network traffic reaches you, and discovering new nodes before they are widely abused. The advisory closes with broader security hygiene that directly impacts this threat. Keep devices and operating systems fully updated, use supported versions, and run reputable anti-malware tools. Segment your networks to limit lateral movement, monitor logs so you can reconstruct intrusions, and restrict third-party and supply chain access to only what is necessary. Deploy host-based intrusion detection where possible, and invest in controls that reduce the impact of malware and ransomware attacks. Covert networks of compromised devices are turning everyday routers and smart gadgets into an offensive asset for China Nexus cyber actors. By understanding how these networks operate and tightening controls at your network edge, you can make it much harder for those actors to hide in plain sight. If you want a deep dive on implementation details, check out the full advisory and linked guidance from the National Cybersecurity Center and its international partners.